This is the fly-through of my FYP, final year project. Student name Svetomir Tsvetkov, student number T014281K. In this project, the player will start here and they will spawn in this location facing forward. The first thing they will see or be able to interact with is this chest containing a sword and a health, containing two swords and a health potion, which they can then equip. Once they approach this position, they will see that the paths here are blocked and that the only way forward is towards these enemies. These enemies will only have fists and very little HP. In order to introduce the player to the combat system. After they defeat these NPCs, they will approach this rather difficult enemy, who they can't avoid, but they'll have to fight. Moving on, this enemy they will have to use one of the key mechanics, which is assassinations, by hiding behind these barrels and crates and carriages. They'll have to crouch behind, approach from this side, and assassinate the enemy. Here, after they complete this area, there are lootables and collectibles on this side, which are optional. However, the enemy from there will attack the player. After defeating these two NPCs, they will then approach the save zone in a sense. I have positioned the bridge and the player so that from the start, the two towers are have symmetry between them, as well as the gate, and everything leads the player towards that gate. On this side there is rocks and trees, and on this side there is a massive wall. However, once they potentially go to the gate, they'll realize that it's locked, and or they could just go straight ahead to the NPC, which this is the quest giver and this is the shopkeeper. The quest giver will, when interacted with, the first quest will say that the end goal of the quest is next to a windmill, and the players can only interact from this position. They cannot go here and interact. They'll have to face this way. Therefore, when they read the objective, they will see the windmill on their right as the quest appears onto the bottom right section, which gives just enough perspective for the player to realize that they have to go into this direction. Once they go here, they will be able to pick up a weapon. And the quest initially was to collect 8 items, 8 valuables, and 1 gate key. The end goal of the level is to collect 4 keys for the final, to essentially complete the level, which is the end goal. So here are the 5 valuables. First is they're in the shape of a sword. There is a tracker, so once the player picks up the sword, the tracker will mark it off. So that is what the player is looking for. Initially, the objects were placed on the ground. However, they were very difficult to collect. So I've added a float component as well as a rotation to attract the player, and a light, which comes more into play further on in the level. Here is a chest, which will contain some health and more lootables for the shopkeeper that you can sell to. They'll have to face some more enemies. Here is another chest, which contains more valuables. Over here as well, there's plenty of chests for the players to collect health potions or swords or weapons or just valuables that they can trade onto the trade. This is the second sword. Here is the third one, which is positioned quite close. I've tried to position the swords in a way that the player can easily see. Here is the second one, which is towards this chest, and that is the third one. Sorry, that is this is the final one. This is the fifth one. The fifth sword is here, and then the final gate key is after the windmill into the barn, which is here. After the player completes these quests, completes the quest, they will return back to the shopkeeper, to the quest giver, and obtain the second quest, which is the ruins, which will revolve around killing 6 enemies and obtaining the second key. Now, this area will not be is not accessible, as the players can only go here. Here, we're introduced to more level mechanics. Clearly, the player can clearly see where they have to go. Once they get up to this point, using directing the player's attention towards the middle area by pointing all the light crystals towards it, as well as placing the final key into the middle. That way, the player knows where they have to go. Now, here, it is quite clear that the player will not be able to go through here, but they'll have to come there, as they can see the staircase facing forward. In this section, they'll have timed um, their roll in order to avoid the access and defeat this enemy. Now, using a technique which redirects the player's attention by placing a chest just down below in a way that the players can clearly see it below the main objective, will redirect their attention and essentially allow them to go down and kill these enemies, which is part of the quest. There's exactly 6 enemies here, and they have to kill them all. But killing these enemies, the reason I put these 2 chests is so that it doesn't make the player it doesn't make it pointless to go and kill these enemies. There's some form of reward. After the player obtains the second key, they can come here, get a potion, kill the final 2 enemies, and head out. And this will be the second quest. Now the third quest is placed into this tower using a level opener, so using a node which opens a new level due to the person who made these meshes did not texture them inside, so I had to create a new level from scratch for this, which will be just in a second. Once the player enters the further final level, they will have to collect 2 keys, which will be right next to each other. The level is quite simple, but it requires a lot of attention from the player's side. They will approach this moving platform, which is fairly slow, it's fairly easy to get onto. Once they get on the moving platform, they will approach this area, which approaches the final bit. Now here is where it gets a bit tricky. They will have to get onto this platform, and first they can either go here, approach this area, activate this key, which you need to activate all 3 of these beacons essentially. And the first one is here, so the player will have to use this platform to go around, defeat the 2 enemies, which are extra difficult as they have more HP than the ones before, as well as their attacks are quicker due to them using fists rather than weapons, but they do more damage. So after activating this first beacon, they'll have to go to the second beacon, so they'll have to backtrack to this point and then time their roll. Now the difficult part is out of 3 circles back and forth from this point, only one actually on only one is the player able to approach this platform. Once they activate the second beacon, they can go straight away to the third beacon and enter this room, which contains the two keys. The keys won't spawn until the player opens these three beacons. This was the walkthrough of my levels. Once the player completes, they will return to the quest giver and complete the game, which will end in the cinematic. Thank you for watching the Flythrough.